So I originally came from back east, so I've been out here about 9 years. And so it was a little bit of a shock to come out here and try to figure out how to garden where it's really cold all the time. Especially at night, because even in the summertime, it can be 40 degrees at night. And I thought, how am I going to grow stuff? So that kind of started me on this journey. And then I discovered this man named Elliot Coleman and his books on 4-season gardening. And I saw his pictures of how he was growing in the snow. Way up in the northeast on the same 44th parallel line that we are on. And I thought, if he can do it, then I can do it. So I started researching and discovered that he doesn't heat his greenhouses. Because I always thought you had to have a heated greenhouse. Did anybody else think the same thing? Yeah. And so I discovered you don't. And so his motto is unheated, uninsulated, unbelievable. And it truly is. So the first year that I did this, I didn't think it was going to work. And so I just took lots and lots of pictures to document kind of the journey that we went on. And it does work. So after people realized what we were doing and hearing the stories of how we were getting all this food all winter long, they said, you need to start teaching classes on how to do this. And so that kind of opened the door of me doing just strictly winter gardening classes. That's all it was. And I even went over to Portland and taught one over there. And it has kind of mushroomed into this other class, which is year-round gardening, how to use the same greenhouse all year. Because I used to only use it for growing winter plants, and that was it. And I thought, I've got too many winter plants in here, I need to be able to use this year-round. So that's what this is based on now. And then just another quick little story. A year ago, it was January of 21, I was reading the newspaper, and a lady had written in, and she said, I'm going to try an experiment this year. I'm going to take one of my plants, and I'm going to put it out in this little hoop house that I made, and I'm going to see if it'll last all winter long. I'm going to try an experiment. And I thought, I wish I could reach this lady and teach her how to do this, because yes, it works. And I said, okay. I prayed that night, and I said, show me, Lord, how I can reach people. And literally the next day, I had 2 invitations, one by Sister Gwen, and I can't remember the other one right now. Come teach a class. And that was the next morning. And after that, it's been 1 or 2 classes every year through the months of January through April, and I had to cut it off somewhere because I have my own garden to do. So I have been going literally everywhere teaching people how to do this, and it's a privilege for me. But anyway, so here we go. So if you want to garden in the wintertime, these are 3 things that you need to know. You need to have the right things, grow the right seeds, the right plants, okay? They need to be cold hardy. And I'll have a list on here for you. The next thing you need to have, that you need to know, is succession planting. You need to understand that the seeds that you're going to grow, the plant you're going to grow from the seed, triples the amount of time in an unheated greenhouse, okay? So if these turnips say 50 days, multiply that by 3, now it's 150 days. Because there's not as much light in the wintertime, and there's not as much sun, and it's cold. So 150 days, if you want to be eating this turnip in December, go back 150 days, and that's when you start putting it in the ground. It's hard to wrap your mind around it, but this is what you have to do. And then you have to have protection. You need to have greenhouse plastic, and you need to have this fabric. So the greenhouse plastic, get good stuff, don't get the cheap stuff, okay? Get actual, thick, 6 mil greenhouse plastic. And if you can, get the coated kind that has an anti-drip coating on it, because otherwise every time you go in there, you're going to be taking a shower in the rainforest, and it's really obnoxious, especially in the wintertime when you're cold already. And make sure that you get the Agribon 19 frost blanket, which we've already been over. Okay?
You said coated?
Anti-drip coating.
Where do you get that?
Online. Garden greenhouse. Johnny sells plastic. It's around $200 for 100 feet of it or something. You could split it with somebody. Plastic is usually the most expensive part, but it'll last you for 6 years or more. So these are actual crops that I have grown in the wintertime that I know grow, okay? The dates are the dates that you actually will sow them in the ground. Now these are direct sown in the ground in your hoop house, okay? And then the second date is the cutoff date, based on the tripling of the dates, okay? And when they'll be mature enough for you to actually eat. Now this is not an exhaustive list because every single year garden magazines are coming out with more cold hardy plants. And how do you know? You just look at the description. Sometimes they'll have a little snowflake by it, which means it's for a winter plant, okay? So for instance, the carrots, you're going to start July, mid-July, and don't plant any after August if you want to eat those only in the wintertime. I do mine now year-round, but you can do yours this way if you'd like to. The lettuce, don't grow after October. It won't get big enough for you really to enjoy or to get much off of. So that's what those dates mean on there. So this is a picture of the continual harvest or succession planting that I mentioned earlier. As you can see in the back row, you've got the bok choy and then some little plants in front of it you can't really see. But the plant in front of it is Tokyo Bacana. And that I highly recommend that one. It always does really well, and it's a multi-use plant. So you can make fresh salads or use it for stir fry, and it really does well. So you can see how, you know, I've got the bigger plants in the back, and then succession, I do another one, then another one, and then the little one. So that's what succession planting is. So if you are going to do a winter garden, you need to start planting in July. People want me to come and teach winter gardening classes starting in September and October. I can't do that because you have to start in July. And people don't want to hear, they don't understand because they just can't wrap their minds, like I couldn't either, wrap their minds around this, starting so early, okay? Because it triples the amount of time. Don't plant anything after October. It won't be big enough. So that's what you need to know. That's just the basics. So what I'm going to do now is going to go through how we built ours. We live a very busy lifestyle, and so my husband doesn't always have time to do all the little projects that I come up with right away. So I do as much as I can. So I literally take my wheelbarrow out to the woods and dig under the trees and get the soil and make the beds how I wanted them to be, okay? Way before the hoop house was even built. Because you know how it is around here, when the weather's nice, you have stuff to do, right? Wood, and you're trying to enjoy life, maybe camp once or something. So I got it going, and then he built the frame around it. So ours was, I say was, because we've done some additions, and I'll show you that. But we started out with a 12 by 20. Small walkways, 12 inches. They don't need to be big. It's more important that you have growing space. And I will show you what we did next. Just put some boards around it, made a frame, screwed it together. And then, here's the secret to the snow load, okay? You get rebar and you put it inside the gray conduit. So, if you can get a 20-foot length of rebar, they sell in more places now. When we first did this, it was hard to find, but we found it, I think, at Ziggy's, and somebody else said they sell it somewhere else now, but I can't remember. So, and then you take two 10-foot spans of the gray conduit and put them together. And then you put the 20-foot rebar inside the 20-foot conduit. And that's what gives it the strength, okay? So one person holds it on the inside of the frame, the other person reaches over and grabs it and pulls it down, and it bends, okay? Because it's so long, it bends very easily. And then you just screw it to the inside of the frame. So that's how we did that. Pretty simple so far, right? It's not fancy, but it has held up and worked very well. And then we put gray conduit across the top of it, no rebar in that, just the conduit. So with a 20-foot length and a 12-foot wide greenhouse, it gives you a 6-foot ceiling. If you're wanting something taller than that, you can either dig your walkways down, or you can figure out how to raise the conduit and rebar up higher by maybe putting them on a raised bed. You can raise your beds up and clamp them that way.
What's your spacing on that rebar?
I think it was about 2.5 feet or so.
30 inches?
Jason, do you remember?
It feels like 3 feet.
Maybe 3? Okay.
Could you go back for just one
Yes.
second? Actually, these screws, okay, thank
Yep.
you.
That's the screws so they don't pop up through the conduit into your plastic. They're just short little tiny things.
Okay.
And this is how we framed out the front door. And we attached the wooden frame to the conduit with pieces of rubber. Reason being because anything that is going to touch your plastic is going to rub a hole in it. And so we covered every part of the wooden frame. So that's what it looked like when we were done. Now, I will say the bars that go across the sides, we didn't need those, we took them off. It ended up just making more like shade on the plants. We thought we would need it to help keep the hoop spaced apart, but it wasn't necessary. So we covered the 2 ends first, and I will mention also that your hoop house needs to be, the long part of it needs to be facing south. Because in the wintertime, you're just like barely gonna get the sun maybe above the trees, just maybe, okay? So the longest part is facing south. So we covered the 2 ends first. We used wooden furring strips there on the bottom, right? You can see to hold it down on the bottom. Then we pulled it up tight and we attached the plastic with these. Okay, so this is just a 1-inch water pipe cut into little sections. And this is just free tubes for the entire shop that we cut up. And you just cut a slit in these, and somebody can hold, if you have 2 people, somebody can hold that in place for you while you open this up and just clamp it over top. Now, you can buy all these clips. You can buy all this stuff online, okay? I'm just showing you what we did, because this is what we had available. This adds enough friction so that the clamps don't pop off, and it also keeps these sharp corners on this from poking holes in your plastic. Now the other end, we did something called a half moon vent, and those are just 2 door hinges, and so it flips all the way down if you want, or however you want it done. And then we covered the hinges there too with the rubber. And then we finished it by putting the big piece over the whole entire top from front to back there. We added the framing brackets to the front of the frame just to hold the roll of plastic there, because it would fall off and go all over, the garden, so that just held it in place. And when I first started out, I would go up there every day and I would roll it up with that white PVC, and I would just use big clamps you get at Harbor Freight, I just clip them on and clamp them up every day, take it down every night. But that's okay, because I was glad to have food. So these are improvements that we have done since then. So on the top left picture is the netting. I added some of that bird netting. I just zip tied that there because we have a cat that likes to get in there, so that's why I did that. The picture on the bottom right is the automatic vent. So now I don't have to go up there every day and open and close the vent, and I can actually go places. It is that black part, the black tube is wax in there, and it melts when it gets really hot and causes it to open, and then in the evening when it cools, it closes itself back up again. So that's really nice. You can just look online for automatic vent opener or something like that. Automatic greenhouse opener. We also added a beam, a support beam across the top there because I wanted to tie plants up to it. And I also wanted the peace of mind just for extra added support with the snow. Now, we made it 4 years without that beam with just the rebar, and it did fine. But I was much better at keeping the snow off of it. I would say the most snow that we had on it at one time was 2 feet. And that was pushing it, because you could see it kind of bending a little bit, and that made me nervous. But there's nothing you can do if it's snowing all night long. You could go out there and keep shoveling it, but what do? We say, okay, well, God, you're gonna have to take care of this for me. Or you come home, right? You've been gone all day and there's 2 feet of snow on it. So I just wanted the peace of mind of knowing that there was an extra beam there. So that's been nice, especially this year because I've been out of town and I haven't kept up with it. And it's a good thing because it would have come down. We also added rain gutters to the back. There's also a back wall now because we had mud that came down. Yes.
Is there any reason you couldn't do more of an A-frame pitch to help with the snow coming off? Or?
I've thought about that, like a Gothic style. You could do the metal and come down like that. It's just another project.
Gotcha. Right.
But I would love to do something like that. In fact, yeah, we had so much snow while I was gone, I wasn't able to keep up with it, and it bent the frame, and it looks like a Gothic style.
Took care of it.
Not on purpose. So, yeah, it has to be rebent or something. So maybe now's the time to do that project. Yes.
Have you heard of people digging their greenhouse down?
Yeah.
Put it in the ground 2 feet?
Yeah, like a wallapini type thing. I've
Yeah.
heard of that. And I would love to do that too.
It helps heat.
In my other life. Yeah, I mean, we would have to take everything out, all the beds and everything, and try to get a tractor up there and dig, and yeah. That'd be nice, but I have heard of people doing that, and then I've heard of them running, you know, water lines underneath too for heat, and it keeps it around 40 degrees or something like that. But in reality, I don't think that they're able to grow anything different in this climate where we are right now than what I'm already growing. You can't grow peppers and tomatoes and eggplant in there. There's not enough light. They have to have the light. The winter plants don't need the heat so much, they need the light. That's why you have to keep the snow off of the hoop house.
And how did you find was the best way to remove the snow?
Well, you can go out and just shovel it off and then it'll fall if you get the bottom section off, or a broom. Or if you go inside with a broom and just bang the top of it, it'll usually just come right off.
Carefully
But if
so
it's
you don't
ice,
poke holes.
Yeah, if it gets icy, that's hard to get off, really hard to get off. But we put about a 3-foot, 4-foot wall in the back because we had a mudslide, so that helps to keep the snow off the back wall too. We now have a metal conduit handle there that I can easily roll up, and then the bar just slides in and out like this, so you can push it up against the frame wherever you need it, high as low, so I don't have to use all the clips. So that's nice. The fan there just came out of an old truck. I would suggest you have some type of a fan running air through there, because if you don't, you're going to have pests. It gets extremely hot in there very quickly. We just bought a little solar panel and hooked it up to that, so the fan only runs when the sun is shining on the solar panel, which is perfect. That's when you need it running. And then the other thing we did, because we were afraid that we would get some kind of a big wind or, you know, downburst or something, so we put string across the plastic. We use little eyelet screws in the frame, like every 4 or 5 feet all the way around, and then we strung the string like a pair of shoelaces, back and forth, and then turned and went back and forth that way. So that keeps, I know you can't see it up there, but there's string up there. It forms an X on each rib like that. Question? Yes.
So to keep the fan, oh, it just runs when the sun shines, so when it's hot. Okay.
Yeah. And you know, I just plugged it back in this month, otherwise all winter it's not running. It doesn't need to, just in the summer when it's hot.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want to get going on this thing and somebody in your family doesn't have time to build a greenhouse yet, get it going, and you know, in June, July, August, whatever, start getting ready, getting your beds ready, get your compost in there, start sowing your seeds, get everything ready in July and August. You have to have the plastic, so in other words, you need to have it built and have the plastic over it before it starts freezing outside. So that's usually around October. So that's why I teach these classes early, because I want people to start thinking. Start gathering your plastic, start getting your covers, start getting everything that you need, okay? Get your seeds and all that stuff. So now that you've added the plastic over your plants have gone from a zone 5 to a zone 6.5. Just by adding the one plastic, you've basically tricked your plants into thinking they're now a zone and a half further south, okay? Now here's the best part. In November, you don't need to water it anymore. I always encourage people, I know you're tired, it's been a long gardening season, you're ready to hang up your fort, your hoe, and whatever, but all you need to do is harvest. You spend your whole winter just going up there and harvesting food, okay? You don't water anymore until March. I haven't started watering yet. My covers are off, but I have not started watering yet. And the reason being is because when these covers are over there, over the plants, they will freeze at night. And there's so much condensation when they start to thaw out in the greenhouse and under these plants. They don't need to be watered on top of that. So here's the next secret. You're actually going to put your plants under another cover inside the hoop house, okay? This is number 9 wire, comes in big rolls at the hardware store. And you just cut it to the length, the width of your bed. This is the width of my bed. And then you want 12 inches above the soil, not above the plant, but above the soil, because you want enough room up here at the top that when this is draping down, that it's not going to be touching and harming your plants. You don't want the fabric touching your plants. So 12 inches from soil to top, and then enough at the bottom to go into the ground. So whatever that is, you do the math and figure out, what they need to be. I put mine every 3 feet. That seems to work. I haven't had any drooping problems. I tried it further apart and they drooped so bad they were on top of the plant. So 3 feet seems to work pretty well. And make sure you put them in your greenhouse before it freezes and the dirt freezes in there. I've learned that too the hard way. All right, so there's your cover. You literally are putting your plants to bed. You're covering them up with a blanket, okay? And I always get the question, why do you use the AG19, which is 0.55 ounce? Because they have thicker fabrics that you can use. So I did some research and found out, why did he do it, and the reason is because there's only 2 degrees difference in the temperature under the fabric, which leads to more soil freezing and only 50% of the light is getting in. So you want the light. That's what your plants in the wintertime need, is the light. So now that you add those covers, usually in November, after it starts freezing inside the greenhouse, okay, add those covers. Now you've moved your plants to a zone 8. You've moved them down another zone and a half.
Wow.
So when you get underneath the covers, I'll show you another slide here. This is just a sample of the temperature. It's not a sunny day, cloudy day. Outside is 21. Same time, I walked in there and checked, it was 53. So under the cover, add another 10 degrees. 60 something under the covers at least. So at night, on these cold winter nights, your plants will freeze. Your covers will freeze. Everything in there freezes. So you cannot go in there and harvest anything until it thaws out. So wait till sometime later in the day when you can go in there and you can tell, because your covers will be frozen solid like a board, okay? So you can't do anything. Don't even try. I've tried, because I want a salad so bad, right? So I'll start ripping it, and this stuff rips very easily and it'll destroy your plants. So wait until it thaws out, and then you can go up there and you can harvest. And if you're expecting below 0 temperatures for more than 1 night in a row, do 2 row covers. Or get some old sheets that you keep up there at all times and cover everything for that night or that week, okay? And you'll be able to save your plants and be fine. Again, just make sure that you keep the row cover, or keep it the snow off of there so the light can come in. And these are temperatures from his book. So I thought that was really interesting. If it's 28 outside, it's 70 under the fabric. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah. All right. These are ideas that I found online. If you can't build yourself a really big hoop house or whatever, Harbor Freight sells little greenhouses for a couple $100. You could do that even. And then just put your row cover inside of that. Or just do something simple like this. A woman can do this, a child can do this. That's just some 2x4s nailed together with a, hog panel or a cattle panel over it, with a little door cut in it. It doesn't have to be big and fancy, just try. I already went over that one. These are just other ideas that you can do too. Just keep the snow off of it. If you're going to use some straw bales like that and a door, you can get free doors and windows online on Craigslist. Shouldn't cost you much of anything. Just keep the snow off of it, and if it's going to be a warm, sunny winter day, open it up, because your plants don't like that heat. They're winter plants and you'll scorch them. So, again, anybody could do that. Go get some straw bales, put them all together, put a window or a door on it, and there's your winter garden. Add a row cover inside, there you go. So now I'm going to take you month to month and show you how to use the greenhouse, how to garden year round. So in January, you should be starting seeds, your herbs and your sweet potatoes, stuff like that, starting them in January. And what's going on in the greenhouse in January? Well, you're just you are eating, harvesting. And I don't know if I have this picture again, so I want to talk about the top right-hand picture. Those are celery and carrots. So what I do before frost outside is I dig up all my celery plants and I put them in the greenhouse too, and they'll last all winter long as you keep them covered. So now I've got celery in there. You can do potatoes, turnips, all sorts of different kinds of greens, onions. I have onions in there year round because they reseed themselves. They just pop up everywhere. And I'm trying to think of what else. I think I already said carrots. So basically you've got everything in there for a pot of soup, right? Add your protein, whatever you're going to add to it, and there you go. In the middle of the winter. Look at all that food that you have growing in there. And I've already been through this, but this is what you're planting inside your house in January. And February, same thing. You're just sowing, or why do I keep saying sowing seeds? It's on my brain for some reason. You're harvesting. You're just harvesting. Whatever's in there, you're eating from it. And then inside, you plant your eggplant, your peppers, and your tomatoes. That's what's going on in February. Okay, in March, right now, remove all your row covers because it's getting really warm in there. And they don't like it warm. And probably you'll start watering. And this is what, I know this says 2018. I haven't had time, but that's what it looks like still right now in 2022 in March. Yeah. But anyway. And you walk in there, and it's a miracle. It's unbelievable. Look at all that food that's growing in there when there's so much snow still outside. When most people are still dreaming of planting something sometime in June, you're way ahead of the game. As a parent, as a mom, my responsibility is to feed my family. I can feed my family. 365 days a year, I have fresh food growing. Or stored up because I've got my potatoes stored, my carrots, right? So start thinking differently. Stop going to Walmart every week. Say, I'm not going this week. I'm going to eat what I've planted, or whatever. Plan ahead and say, I'm not going to go at all this summer, or I'm not going to go at all in the fall because this is what I'm planning on doing. And plan your meals on what you're growing. Start thinking differently. Okay, so that's March. Start some more seeds inside or in your greenhouse if you have lack of space on your bedroom dresser. Go into your greenhouse and start doing cabbage and broccoli and things. In fact, if you do your cabbages and your broccolis in your greenhouse right now, then you put them outside in June. They should be probably 6 inches tall. And that way you don't have to grow them in your window. You can use that space out there now. And then in April and May, what are you doing? Well, you can see the layout has changed somewhat. I took the 2 beds in the middle and made them into one big bed. I only wanted 2 walkways. I wanted more growing space, so it's changed a little bit. It's the same hoop house, okay? So the bed furthest over on the left is the winter bed, and that's all it is. That is always the winter bed. It stays that way, and it's only open for about a month out of the year where there's something not growing in it. And that's when I will add my amendments and things to it. The bed in the middle there is for the tomatoes and the peppers. The bed on the back, I usually will put the eggplant, sweet potatoes, things like that. And the peas, do you see the peas? In the black buckets on the top. Those are the peas that just vine up all over. I started them inside in my window. Upstairs in my bedroom, and I started them now, so March. And then those are hardening off. Those are all my plants. I stick them out there and harden them off, and we already talked about that. So that's what's going on in April and May. Do you see how we're using the greenhouse for everything now? Okay, just one hoop house. And these are the squash that I started, that I told you about. I started them in a bigger pot. And then what's going on in mid to late April is you're starting in your flats, your corn and your beans and your melon, your cucumber, everything else now you're getting started outside in flats in the hoop house. And if you don't have a hoop house, start them in your house. And then what's going on in June? Well, the winter garden doesn't look so good anymore, does it? It's all gone to seed now. Because it's warm, it doesn't like it warm. So I will choose one plant and tie it to one of the hoops and make sure you label it. And this is the Tokyo Bacana. I'm saving seeds from this one. And then I tear everything out and compost it. And so the bed is open about the whole month of June and maybe half of July. So somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks, that bed there is not being used. So that's when I add my amendments, I till it up, let it rest for a while or whatever, and then July you start again, right? So in June you should be already eating peppers, tomatoes, squash, whatever you have growing in there. You should already be eating that stuff. Remember, because your plants were this big before you put them out. Saving seed, we already went over that. And July, what's going on in July? Well, you're eating more things from the greenhouse and from your garden. But this is when you start your first planting for winter, okay? Now, when I first started, I used to put everything together, like same type of plants together. On the left, you'll see little black stripes or whatever. So what I would do is I would put all the spinach together down here. 2 weeks later, another row of spinach. 2 weeks later, another row of spinach. And then, you know, all of my chard was down here and all my kale was down here or whatever. And the problem I learned with a couple of years ago is that whenever I wanted to get a salad, I had to go out there and lift the cover up on that whole entire row to get a little bit of this, and then a little bit of that, and then a little bit of that. So here's what I do now. I put a little bit of everything in 1 4 or 5 foot space. And then 2 weeks later, I'll go down and I'll put the same stuff again together, all together. So now when I want to go out and have a harvest, all I have to do is move the cover from that one little spot and everything is just right there. Does that make sense now? Because sometimes, I mean, if you've got this thing clipped up really well, sometimes it can be kind of a hassle to remove all those clips on a 24-foot, you know, space just to get, because you want an onion or whatever. So that's been working really well. I like that. And the onions there, by the way, those are green. No, they're called white spear onions, and they are winter onions. And I've noticed that Johnny's has them back in stock now. They used to not have them. They were really hard to find. But they are winter onions, and they do really well. They will grow, and they'll form a big flower on the top. And if you just leave it on there, it'll dry, and the little black seeds will spread. And you will have these little tiny green onions that'll be popping up all over your greenhouse. Yeah, they go crazy, and I never plant onions anymore. These are the same onions I've had for 8 years or 7 years now. So, yeah, it's kind of nice. And then you're just still harvesting more things there in August. Do 2 more plantings. About every 2 weeks you're doing your winter planting. September, 2 more plantings, and you're able to harvest and eat what you had growing in July. Okay, you've got a continuous source of food. And not only that, but you're eating still what's in your garden, right? You still got stuff growing out there. And if you can get these frost blankets on your, whatever you have, lettuce or spinach, out there before the first frost hits, and if you can get through that first killing frost in early September, you're usually going to be okay. It's just that first frost that'll wipe out your whole garden. Oh man, if I would have known. So just put them on early if you're not sure when it's coming. And the other thing you can do that I've done many times is you can dig up some of your plants, spinaches and kale or chard. You can dig those up and put them in your hoop house if you know that there's frost coming, and keep those and keep eating from those all winter. October, don't sow any more seeds for your winter garden after October. They just won't get big enough. They will take off like about March, end of March. Once you remove the covers in the sun, the long days come back again. If you only had some small winter plants that didn't take off as well, they will take off now, like crazy. However, they won't last as long. You may only get 2 to 4 weeks out of them because of the heat, and so they'll flower very quickly. But you can still get, you can still eat off of those. And November, you're still just harvesting food. By the way, if you've never done a turnip, I recommend those Hakurei turnips. They're very sweet, like apples. You can just eat them just like an apple. December, again, just harvesting, eating the food from your garden. And people always ask me this question, are the plants all actually growing, or are they just staying alive? So I did a comparison, same year, same 6-month span, same beds, same angle, and so there you go. What do you think? Are they growing? Mm-hmm. They are. They're slowly, but they are growing. Obviously, they'll do their most growth in July and August. Yeah.
How high are your beds?
Yeah, I think it's like an 8-inch or 6-inch board that I framed them in because the dirt was always coming out before.
Okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not as deep as I would like it to be, but that's just what we had available. But as you can see on the top picture on the left, that's how I started. I did not have framed-in beds. It was literally just piles of dirt, because that's what I had.
Yeah.
But since then, yeah, we framed them in. Okay, so again, there's my seminar online if you want to look at that. And if you would give me just about 5 minutes, I'm going to get all my herbs up here, and we're going to go over some wild edible plants. And I'm not going to take too much more of your time, just a few minutes. So if you need to stretch for a minute, but don't go anywhere, because I won't take very long here. So does anybody have questions that I can answer while I'm setting up here?
Excuse me,
Yes.
could you give me a rough estimate on how much it would take to do?
To cost,
The-
cost-wise?
Mhm.
So when we did ours, it was $500. That's what it cost us at the
That's
time.
the greenhouse or everything in it?
Everything. That was everything. All the hardware, the plastic, the lumber, the seeds. That was everything. The plastic is still around the same price as when I bought it, but the lumber has done this. So, and the seeds, they've gone up some, and the fabric has gone up some. So I don't know. It's just the lumber now that would cost you more than what it cost us. But I would think for less than $1,000, although the conduit has gone up a lot. So I would say for less than $1,000, you can do a 20-foot greenhouse. That's what I would say. Yes, question?
I noticed you don't have any covering on the ground for weeds. How do you get rid of the weeds? You just go there and just start pulling them every day?
People always ask me about weeds too. I don't have a huge weed problem. I think the reason being because I hand water everything one plant at a time, and so the water's only going around that plant. I have used plastic and I've used cardboard boxes on the walkways to help keep, and that works pretty well. I've heard some people will take the flamethrower. What are those called? Propane torch. Yes, thank you. A torch, and they'll burn the weeds, and then they don't come back. Have you heard of that? YouTube it.
It's good for getting rid of snow too.
But also, if you're using something like a lot of horse manure, you are going to have more weeds, because that's what they're eating. And they're depositing that into your garden. So keep that in mind too. Okay, here we go. Is everybody ready? Nobody's stretching, huh? Everybody's doing all right? Okay. We got a book, yeah. So this is a little book. Let me tell you why I wrote this. Because a friend of mine and I really like to backpack together, and we wanted to learn what we could eat without carrying around, really big, thick books, and books that tell you what you can eat in Florida, because I don't live in Florida. So I wanted just something really, really small that you could keep with you at all times. And then I got this impression to add the medicinal uses of each plant, how to use it out in the wild. Not just I can eat it, but how do I use it? And so it's been a real blessing to the people I know that have had it. I've heard stories and testimonies of how it's helped people, like helping through burns and things like that. And so that's how this came about. And you'll probably see them around town in different stores. And if anybody has ideas of where they'd like to see this, please let me know. Or if you have connections to different shops, let me know. All right, so that's how that came about. And I always have to give a disclaimer that please be responsible when you're going out and looking for wild edible plants, because I cannot be held accountable for any injury incurred. All right, so if you're going to start collecting plants, number one, make sure you know the plant that you're going to be eating. Get it away from heavily populated areas. Don't be collecting plants where everybody and their brother's been walking or their dog has been. Try to get them in the morning. They're freshest. And you need to do something with it right away. They don't keep. So you're either going to put them and infuse them into some oil, which I'll talk about, or you're going to have to dry them, okay? And you can dry them with dehydrators in your oven, in your back window of your car. There's many different ways you can dry them that way. And in the back of the book, you'll find the different ways to use the plants, or what these words mean. I've included definitions here. So if you see make a decoction, decoction basically is a tea, but decoction is that you're boiling the plant root, the hard part of the root or the bark, for 30 minutes. If you're going to make an ointment or a salve, that's what this one is, and my daughter makes comfrey salves out there. Basically crush it up like this, but if you're inside and you're going to use the plant, you can just add water to it. Crush it up and put it on whatever it is that's ailing you. Powdered would be, I have a little coffee grinder that I powder plants like this, and that would be for taking it internally, encapsulating it. Teas, I think everybody knows how to make a tea. And then a tincture is when you're I'm really good at throwing logs into the fire and burning myself. So pretty big burn across the top of my thumb here, and my first instinct, because I'm just used to doing this, is to grab the So I will tell you a quick little story. So we heat with wood, and I'm really good at throwing logs into the fire and burning myself. So pretty big burn across the top of my thumb here, and my first instinct, because I'm just used to doing this, is to grab the Who can know what plant do you grab when you burn?
Aloe.
Aloe. I put aloe, it did nothing. More aloe, did nothing. I thought, what am I doing? I looked through here and I said, burns. What do I have? Oh, clover. So I grabbed the clover, made a quick poultice with it, and slapped it on there, and the pain was gone immediately. I kid you not, immediately. It did not sting, did not hurt anymore. And then I thought, well, how am I going to keep this poultice on here so I can keep working? So then I wrapped it in saran wrap, and then I put one of those stretchy black gloves over my hand, and I just left it on there for the rest of the night. And in the morning, there was no pinkness, no redness, no scar, nothing. Absolutely none. So I always recommend people keep clover around. In fact, I keep a little baggie of clover in my emergency kit. I have this little kit that I keep with me all the time. And this is what I've learned to put in it. I'm sidetracking a little bit. You guys are getting a bonus, by the way. Clover is in there. Comfrey. You can either do just plain comfrey or plantain and comfrey mix. These are powdered. I keep those in there at all times, and you'll see why as I go over the plants. Charcoal. Powdered charcoal I keep in there all the time for food poisoning or poultices too, drawing out poisons. I keep a smaller bottle of colloidal silver. If you're not familiar with this, you need to be familiar. You can look at the paper out there, it tells you what this is good for. I keep that in there all the time. And by the way, when I traveled, I never got sick. I sprayed my throat with this and my hands. I never got anything. And this is pine sap that I've rendered from the pine tree. This is an antibacterial, also draws out poisons. I keep this in my kit all the time. In fact, Friends of mine know a gardener who was in a really bad accident, ripped up his whole head up here, and healed the entire thing with just pine sap. Never went to the doctor. And the other thing I always keep is the cayenne tincture around. Stops bleeding and heart attacks. So anyway, that's a bonus for you. Okay, let's go to the next plant. So if you don't have comfrey growing in your yard, find some from somebody and get it. It's also known as knit bone. It actually heals broken bones. There's a stack of wild edible plant booklets out there by a friend of mine, Jasmine Ream, who taught me about comfrey. And her husband had a broken foot, and he healed it just with comfrey leaves. That's his testimony. I took his class. Everybody knows dandelions, but I included this because maybe you did not know. It's all over the internet. You can research for yourself. It blocks spike proteins in COVID. So get yourself some dandelions and drink tea. Most people know about elderberries already. It's also known as sambucus in the store. It's expensive, about $10 an ounce. And who knows where the berries came from, but anyway, you can get your own, if you know how to find them, you can make your own much cheaper. Has anybody seen the fireweed? If you go hiking way up in the top of the mountain, big, beautiful purple flowers, now you know you can eat them. You can eat the entire plant. Be good for food poisoning if you're out there and you get sick. Mullein is good for asthma and cough. If you collect the little yellow flowers, which they take forever because they're so small, you have to pick every single one at a time. But if you add this to olive oil and let it infuse for probably a daily pill, just in a berry. Okay, and stinging nettles are very, very good for you to eat. I've heard it's one of the best plants if you can find them and you know what they are. You can dry them and keep them around, eat them like spinach. Once you cook them, the stinging goes away. They're not going to hurt you.
The tea is very good.
Huh?
The tea is very good.
Oh, yeah, nettle tea. Yes, I have heard that too. And if you're out camping and you need something to eat, just take the whole plant. Make sure you're wearing gloves, okay, and long sleeves. Take the whole plant and put it over your campfire, and then the nettle thing will fall off. Yes?
Is that big for kids?
To eat, you mean?
Maybe tea or something?
Yeah, we did a wilderness survival class, and all the kids were eating and picking nettles. We had to serve a meal from the wild, so it was very tasty. And the violets too. If you can get some violets, these are wonderful for burns also. Another quick story, I was camping with another set of friends, and she tripped over a hot boiling pot of water all over her ankle, and we had her put her foot in the creek right away to keep it cool while we went around and what can we find. So we found these wild violets and made a poultice with that and one other plant that I just can't remember what it was, but we mixed it all together, slapped it all over her ankle, put a plastic bag over it, and in the morning she was completely fine, other than a little, like about a quarter-size spot on the bottom of her foot where we did not get the poultice on. It was red. The rest of her ankle was fine. So it's a nice thing to know. All right, and then I'd like to include more information about plantain, because if you cannot get anything else dried this year, get the plantain. Make this your #1 priority. It is known as a medicine cabinet in a leaf. Here's what it looks like if you're not familiar, or you can go online and find more pictures of it. There's broadleaf. I'm sorry, somebody have a question?
I said high in vitamin A.
Okay. There's broadleaf, bigger leaf plantain, and then there's narrow leaf plantain, but when you rip them apart and pull it apart, you'll have strings that pop up, okay, from where they were connected. You pull them apart and you'll have strings, like threads. So that's kind of one identifying characteristic. And I have another chart I'll show you on here about this. This is just the most incredible plant. Yeah. I usually try to have at least 2 jars of the plantain around, and then like I said, I will powder it too and keep it with me in my pack. So here's just one slide of information that plantain is good for. So if you're going to make an ointment of some kind or a salve, I recommend putting plantain in it. In fact, I'm working on, right now, I wanna have one salve that can do everything, instead of having multiple ones. So I would put calendula in it. Calendula is extremely healing for your skin. I would put plantain in it, and I would put comfrey in it, and clover, and I don't have it with me, but I would also put St. John's wort in it. Or maybe I do, no I don't. And yarrow. Yarrow is good for bleeding. The soldiers way back in the early wars used to take the yarrow and stuff it into the wounds, open bleeding wounds. So if I was gonna make a salve, this is what I would use.
Would you repeat them again, please?
Yeah, I will put them right here.
Thank you.
Yep. I think I have calendula up there, right? Oh,
Yes.
there it is twice. Okay, yeah, so that is the plantain. You can make a hair rinse for your scalp. Drink the tea for weight loss. Drink it 30 minutes before you eat. Here's some more. So you can take it internally or use it externally. Internally, just put it in some capsules. Powder it and put it in gel capsules. They say they're not as potent a year later, that you're supposed to restock your herbs every year. That's what they say. But if you have it in a darker colored jar and in a darker cupboard, I would say it would last longer. But so you can take the capsules for stomach aches and colitis and all sorts of things. Externally, make a poultice with it, like we talked about. You can make a tea with it and then soak a pad in it to put on pink eye or eczema. So, yeah, plantain is a good thing to know about. And these are two plants that I have not added to the book because I just recently learned about them. You can do some research on them. The cow parsnip and the rabbit tobacco plant for fatigue and heat exhaustion. And I think that's all. Yeah, I already went over those. So I'll just leave this up here. And then, does anybody else have questions that I can answer, I can try to answer? Make sure if you're interested in the plant walk in May, it's going to be, I believe so far it's going to be May 22. We're working together with a group of people to get not only a plant walk, but a naturopathic doctor just confirmed with me today that he will be there. He's going to discuss different uses of herbs and things too. So it's going to be free for the community. If it's something that you all are interested in, make sure you sign your name and your email on that list out there. We'll send out one email to everybody because I'm getting a list at every class I go to. So if you see something from Dawn about a plant walk, you'll know what that is. Okay. Anybody have questions? I'll hang around for a while too if you all want to come up, take pictures of anything or talk to me. But that's all I have. And thank you for coming.